Good afternoon. Welcome to the webinar. Can everyone hear me? If you want to introduce yourself, please use the chat feature and write your name and tell us who's here. Great. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the webinar. This is the Perkins and Strong Workforce Program Technical Assistance session. I'm John Halpin, Associate Dean of Perkins and Work Experience at City College of San Francisco. And I'm here with Carmen.
Hi, everybody. Carmen Lama here, joining John.
So we want to start with a little webinar housekeeping. This is the first time we're doing the webinar this way, so bear with us. We want to let everyone know that participants will be muted during the webinar. So if you do have a question, please use the chat feature. We will leave plenty of time for questions and answers at the end of the webinar. And you could use that chat feature to pose questions to us. We want to let you know also that a recorded version of the webinar, along with the slide deck, will be available online at ccsf.edu/SWP. So we're going to start going through the PowerPoint and do an overview of the agenda. We're following basically the table of contents in the RFP. So if you have a copy of the RFP with you, you could follow along. We'll be referring to pages there. So we'll be going through the background information, the eligibility requirements, accountability, procedures for applying, instructions for completing, and then go over a timeline and discussion. And as I go through this, I'm going to go off video because I think that'll be require less power for everyone. Okay, so going over the background information, this is combined funding opportunity. It's very similar to what we did last year, which was the first time that we combined the application process for both Perkins and SWP funding. We have provided links to both the Perkins and the SWP pages of the website, so you can refer to those websites for additional background information. This is where you will find the RFP and the application if you haven't done so already. And we also have a couple of links to the state chancellor's web pages for both Perkins and SWP, so you can see, some of the state guidelines that we have to follow for these funding sources. So next, I'll go over some of the eligibility requirements. We recommend that you read the RFP for the full details of all the eligibility requirements. We'll briefly touch on them now. We have included some priorities for fiscal year 2018-19 that are listed on page 5 of the RFP, and we will summarize those as we, basically we're looking for, in a nutshell, increase employment performance as the key indicators. We'll be prioritizing this year, but you could certainly apply for other things as well. We also describe the advisory committee requirements, which are also on page 5 of the RFP. You should all know those by now, that you have to have at least one advisory committee meeting per academic year, and make sure you file all of the required documentation on those meetings with the Office of Workforce and Economic Development, Teresa Rowland's office. In addition, requests that you are proposing to submit for either Perkins or SWP should have been included in your program review resource requests We do a lot of cross-checking with the items on program review to what folks are applying for under Perkins and SWP in collaboration with the Fan 5 group and with the school deans. And then we also have funding specific requirements for both Perkins and SWP. So make sure you read through pages 6 through 11 of the RFP for both of those. And you should know that your request has to meet either SWP or Perkins eligibility requirements. It doesn't need to meet both. As long as it meets one of them, we'll be able to figure out which funding stream is the best fit for your project if it's recommended for funding. So a key requirement that we reiterate all throughout the RFP is how your project will contribute to the Perkins core indicators and/or the strong workforce metrics that are outlined on this chart on the PowerPoint. And you could see here where there is some overlap, some similarities in the Perkins core indicators and the SWP metrics, in particular around attainment of degree or certificate, transfer, and employment placement. So the wording is slightly different in each of those, but we just want to reiterate again, the priority metrics that we're looking for this year are those that are employment placement related. Next, we'll go over the procedure for applying for funds. By now, you have already organized and convened a planning team. You've started drafting. You've reviewed the RFP and all the links that are in there. We want to make sure that what you submit to us is complete, it's on time, and it follows the guidance that's been provided. We've provided the scoring rubric, which Carmen will go over in a little bit on our agenda. There's a proposal checklist in the RFP, and we even provided some sample responses to questions to help you map out your proposal. You want to make sure you submit, and you have this due date in your calendar, February 8th. It's a Thursday, 4 o'clock Pacific Standard Time, 4 p.m., not 5 p.m., 4 p.m. You'll want to email a copy to me and to Zenny Perez. Our email addresses are listed here and in the RFP, and then submit 12 hard copies to the Perkins office, which is in Cloud Hall 404. We recommend hand delivering them to ensure that they arrive before 4 p.m. on the 8th. Next, we'll go over some of the instructions for completing the forms. By now, you should have submitted your itemized technology requests to ITS. They were actually due yesterday. ITS should be getting signed approvals back to you by next Tuesday, the 30th. And they may have some questions, so there may be some back and forth if they have some questions for you. Also, make sure to attach your signed core indicator report, and there are instructions on how to do that in the RFP on page 12. And then make sure you fill out the cover page completely, checking all the appropriate boxes, making sure both the department chair and the school dean sign off on your application. Next, we'll go over narrative. This is basically where you get to describe the meat of your proposal in a clear and concise manner. Keep in mind all the page limitations, the font size, the single spacing is good. We're not looking for novels. Bullet points may be helpful to help you be concise. For the executive summary, you'll have a half page to provide a brief statement of need, description of the project, anticipated outcomes, and success metrics. And then there's question, what is the problem or program improvement issue that you're trying to address? and then describe how you will resolve that problem or program improvement issue. That's the meat of it. What's the problem? What's the solution? You'll want to complete the core indicator and SWP metric charts that are in the application by placing an X next to the indicators and metrics that will be positively impacted by the funds that you are receiving. And note for SWP, there's a minimum of a 5% increase. For example, you're proposing to increase enrollments by 5% next year. So you'll see that, for some of the narrative questions, we have a couple of sample responses here, and a couple more also in the back of the RFP. I'll let you read these. These are examples. You don't need to mirror this word for word, and you certainly have more room in the RFP than what the examples provide. The examples are less than half page, and for those questions, you have a whole page. So you can elaborate more on the problem and the solution. These examples were provided to us from the Perkins State Office. So we're using the information that you provide in your application in the application that City College submits to the state for Perkins every year. So that's why we ask you these questions, in addition to wanting to know more about your program. They're in this format because it's the format that we need to submit to the state. We have our additional example on the narrative on what you're proposing to do to increase performance. And then we want you to indicate in the proposal who is responsible for the project. If it's a team, list out each team member's role, and then provide a timeline for completing the project. Again, we've provided a sample response here. So you can see, in general, what we're looking for, a few bullet points, over the course of the school year, what you're going to do to achieve the project. So when we're getting reports, we kind of know whether or not you're on track with, ordering equipment or training, et cetera. And then you'll want to identify other sources of support and any plans that you have for this project to become institutionalized. Next, we have the budget, and we have our instructions for completing the budget. You'll want to list budget items on the form in priority order. That's the most important thing, because the committee will be looking at, what's your top priority, what's your second priority. They may not be able to get all the way down your list of priorities, so you'll want to, prioritize the things that you want the most and put those at the top of the list and number them accordingly. There, we provide a little example of what to include in the description, and we want to make sure that you link your budget requests to the narrative. So, for example, in the example that we showed on the previous slides, the sample says they're proposing to employ tutors and purchase some tablets. So we'll expect to see line items in the budget for tutors and tablets. And it would be odd if there were expenses in the budget that you didn't describe or touch on in the narrative. Next section is the progress report. So you only have to fill this out if you've received any Perkins or SWP funding in the last 4 years. If you haven't, and this is new, first time that you're hoping to get funds from us, then just state not applicable, and then we'll adjust your scores accordingly. For Perkins, there is an additional chart to fill out if you're receiving funding this past year, to indicate whether or not all of the 9 required uses of funds have been met or unmet. So hopefully you've met all of those requirements. If not, you'll need to provide a brief response on your plans to address any unmet requirements in your work plan. We have a little sample response as well for that. And again, if any of the boxes are not applicable, just indicate that. Next, we'll go over the difference basically between submitting a department versus a collaborative proposal. Basically, if it's a collaboration, you do not need to submit the core indicator report for all the different departments that are involved, but you do need to submit some type of graphic representation, like an org chart or any type of diagram that represents your project, and that would be worth an additional 5 points. Next, I'm going to turn it over to Carmen to go over the scoring rubric, and if you just give me a second, I'm going to share a different document for that. There you go.
So one of the common questions is how does this process work, and how does my proposal get looked at? So just to revise our process, the steering committee, which is about 30 or so of you, votes for your representatives in the allocation committee. So the allocation committee will have 6 faculty that got voted from the steering committee, 2 deans, and so those are the voting members. John and I will be part of the process just to document it and facilitate the process. We do not vote. So what happens is that after you submit your application, copies are made for the members of the committee. They will read your applications, and then they will assign points according to the rubric that we have here on the screen. So for example, question, actually the cover page. Are all the boxes checked and all needed signatures? So you can be distinguished and get 10 points, or there'll be no points if you don't fill out all the boxes. Again, question number 1. So it's about your executive summary. Does it clearly describe the need, project, etc.? You get 10 points for that if it's distinguished. What's an acceptable response? It's in here, description of need, and you can read the rubric, 6 points. And if it's poor, you get 2 points. So sometimes people want us to tell them how you're going to really answer the questions. And John gave you some examples and all the procedures and everything. After that, your peers and the 2 deans are going through the rubric as you see it here. So there is no questions on what we're all looking at. We're all looking at the same rubric. We're all looking at the same points. And this guides you to answer and to propose your ideas and so forth, and know that they will be graded or given points in a very consistent way according to this rubric. So use this rubric as you write your proposal, and also towards the end, look again, my cover page, or the box checked and so forth, because that's what everybody's looking at. And I think that describes the process.
Great. Thank you, Carmen. I'm going to then shift back. Give me 1 second. Okay. So next, we provide the timeline again as a reminder. The deadline is coming up, February 8th, 2 weeks from tomorrow. Shortly thereafter, the allocations committee will receive the application and start scoring the applications, turn those scores into our office. We'll tabulate the scores, and then we'll convene the allocations committee on or around March 9th. We may need to reschedule that because it conflicts with a conference to make recommendations. And then those recommendations will go to the Office of Workforce and Economic Development for our Associate Vice Chancellor to make, to consider our recommendations, make decisions, and then we hope to get the award letters out by the end of March before we go on spring break. So next, we will pause there and ask if there are any questions. Again, as a reminder to use the chat feature to pose your questions, and we will do our best to answer them. Okay, I don't see any questions yet. Can you elaborate on number 6? Oh, question number 6, what other sources of support have you secured for this project? So this could be if your department has received a grant for funding a particular project and you're looking, to enhance that project with additional resources from Perkins or SWP. It could be that you are also discussing this project with student equity and going through their process of requesting funds, or with the adult education block grant. So, there are other categorical funds at the college that are available that may, this project may be eligible for as well. So we want to see, because we coordinate with all of the other administrators who fund projects, to make sure there's not duplication and, there's some coordination. So that would be an example of other sources. And then, plans to become institutionalized. That would be where you're, when you're putting your requests into program review, and making an indication that, this is a not just a one-time thing. That Perkins typically funds things only for up to 3 years for short term, with the hope that, if this is going to be an ongoing need of a particular program, that the college you fund would pick up it. So if you're, putting the request in that, makes the case that this, this should be supported by the college, we'll want to look for that as well. Okay, next question. If we need ergonomic chairs and tables in our classroom, do we need to put this through as a request, or is that facilities management? So Perkins doesn't fund furniture, but Carmen, I'll let you respond to that one.
So on the SWP has more flexibility and will fund furniture. Again, you need to make your case in your application, and also make sure that you justify how those chairs or the furniture will help with SWP metrics. And so it could be student retention or something that's one of the 8 SWP metrics. But yes, but you're still going to do the joint application, and then John and I were going to look and see what best fits the the Perkins request and what is best for SWP. Also, I want to add that facilities could, it's an option as well. I'm not saying that we have one thing or the other thing. So we're additional support for you, but remember, we have limited funds. So if you can go through facilities and to get your chairs done through that, it's helpful because and then the other departments and your other colleagues can have more access to funds for things that do not get funded by the college at all.
Any additional questions? Teresa raised
Hey
her hand.
there. I did. I raised my hand. This is Teresa
I
Rowland.
unmuted
Can
Teresa.
you want to,
hi.
hi.
Say anything?
Yeah, can I add? Excuse me. Well, I was just going to, I was just going to say for a strategy for faculty and department chairs around just basic facility needs, I think I would encourage folks to, pursue as many channels as possible, because I can see in the, in a conversation where there's multiple asks for resources for Perkins and SWP, how the allocations committee that makes recommendations to me, right, may not prioritize chairs and tables over some other more what they might see as other more pressing needs. So definitely connecting that request to outcomes and then pursuing, multiple channels for the resources that you need is important, because this is a forced prioritization process, and I know that there's a lot of good ideas that will be vying for the funds, and we end up running out of funds before we can fund everyone. So I was just going to kind of state that. Maybe that's already obvious, but I wanted to underscore it.
Thank you.
Well, just like Teresa, if somebody wants to actually speak, you can raise your hand and we will unmute you. Everybody's muted just because it makes for better sound.
Where are the application forms? So Katie just replied via the chat, so they could be found on both the SWP and Perkins websites. And SWP is ccsf.edu/SWP /SWP. Any other questions? How do faculty get some technical assistance to make sure their application is as strong as possible? Are sit-down meetings available? Yes, as a matter of fact. On the slide there, you have my contact information and Carmen's contact information. Keep in mind, we have 2 weeks before the applications are due. So if you do want to schedule some time with us, please do reach out as soon as possible and get something on one of our calendars, and we'll be happy to sit down and go over things with you. Where do you find instructions online for best language for writing proposal? So we did provide some sample responses to some of the questions that are at the very back of the RFP.
Also, as far as support and face-to-face, we have another in-person workshop on Thursday, tomorrow, between 10 and 11:30 at Rosenberg 518. So if Katie, if you can put that on the chat, would be helpful as well.
So I think Kathleen White did not pose a question, but I think a comment. An interesting development has resulted from the application forms being on the website, emails from community partners interested in partnering on this application with us, not realizing it's an internal application. Well, I could definitely think of some community partners that are always looking for resources. But yeah, this is internal. Only City College departments may apply. Okay, any other questions? Teresa, did you raise your hand again? I unmuted you.
I did, thank you. I know, I just thought, you know, what Kathleen is saying is kind of thought-provoking for me, because I'm not sure in the cycles that I've been involved in allocating Perkins and SWP, if we've seen departments bring in other partners or contractors, you know, but that is certainly a way to, you know, if you are identifying a gap in what we're doing to meet student success indicators, and it isn't just, you know, the solution isn't just internal faculty and staff, but could involve outside expertise. I mean, that's definitely, you know, we're very open to that, right? There's nothing that I'm aware of that prohibits us using district SWP or Perkins funding to do a contract with, you know, outside experts or people that can contribute to short-term deliverables and goals within the funding year.
Yeah, so Kathleen says SWP does seem to open the door for collaboration. I had not thought about it until they emailed. And so as I think about it, and I agree with Teresa that this, you know, these are some interesting thoughts. But again, with our resources and also the way that your peers will rate your proposal, just remember that funds are limited. So you do want to prioritize your requests the best you think it's going to save your, it's going to help your department.
Maybe we could talk about this at our next CTE steering committee meeting.
Yeah, that's a good idea. And I see that Richard Wu is in the call. He's our current co-chair. So this would definitely be a good agenda item for the next CTE steering committee meeting. So Richard, I'm hoping you're hearing this and consider adding that to your agenda. He says, of course.
Any additional questions? Well, you know where to reach us. If you have any further questions, please don't hesitate to contact Carmen or me, and we'll be happy to talk to you. And then Katie Mills, also in Carmen's office, can also provide support. So thank you, everyone.
One more thing, John.
Yeah, everyone's signing
Okay.
off, but go ahead.
Oh, okay. No, because Katie was gonna let us know about the data that she's collected so far.
Sure.
Katie? Yes, I think you need to get closer here.
All right. Hello, everyone. I just wanted to let you know that part of the application that has changed this year was that you don't have to provide labor market information, and that's because I have compiled that for each of the programs that have previously submitted an application. I'm going to be expanding that to all CTE departments, but I had to start somewhere, so I got that started. I'm going to be sending out an email today with the link to where you can find labor market information for each of the programs in your department. And then you'll be able to take a look at them, and any feedback is welcome. And the labor market information provided is consistent with what SWP asked for. So if you have any other needs, we can certainly talk about it, but it was specifically developed with that in mind. So there you go.
Okay, thank you, Katie. Any questions related to that, to the labor market information?
All right. Thank you, everyone.